It's time. It's time. Time to get in the zone. Time to get in the zone with the 49ers Web Zone. This is the No Huddle Podcast with Al and Brian.
49ers Web Zone, No Huddle Podcast, part of the Odyssey family. I'm Al Sacco with you. Brian is off today. Brian is in Vegas. He said he was going to Vegas. I think he said for his daughter's cheerleading competition. I don't know if that's true or he's just going down for a weekend of debauchery. Who knows with Brian what's going on? But either way, I hope he's having a great time. I'm sure he is, and good luck to his daughter if that is indeed what he's doing, if that's what you're really doing, Brian. And we're not going to get a phone call in a few days to come and bail you out after your crazy Vegas weekend. But you know what? No Brian. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do for this show today? Because I wanted to record another show, and I said, okay, do we get a guest? But life is crazy for me right now. Work is nuts. Family is nuts. So I said, what do I want to do for this show? What do I have to say? What's on my mind? Thinking, well, what have we been through? And I've been feeling really reflective as the 49ers enter what is about to be a massive, massive playoff run. And make no mistake about it, this is massive. This is a huge season. We talked last show. If not now, when? The road is paved for you. You have to get through Green Bay and then either the Buccaneers or the Lions. If you play your game, you should beat those teams easily. And then you get to the Super Bowl and we'll see. But this is an important year for this core of players that really only has a couple years left together with all of them. And if you have to pay Brock Purdy in a couple years or whatever it is, then you have even less money to have a loaded team like this. This is just such an important year. The team knows it. We know it. Everyone knows it. The next 3 weeks of our lives, get the job done. It is a single goal that this team and this fan base has known for a really long time now. This season, it's time to get it done. And it looks like, fingers crossed, things have been going the Niners' way. And if they just play 49ers football, might be able to happen. So what have we been through here with this? Why is this so important? You know, we make fun of the Cowboys, and a lot of people do. It's been, well, you know, I'm glad you were great years ago, but it's been almost 30 years now since you won a Super Bowl. Well, it's been almost 30 years for the Niners too. And as I think about it, if you're 35 years old, all you really know is heartache. If you're older than that, if you're, let's say 45, you've seen Joe Montana, 88, 89. You were in grade school-ish, and that's about where I am age-wise. I saw Joe Montana in those 88, 89 years in Jerry Rice. I remember those Super Bowls. I was young, but I remember those Super Bowls. And then I was in high school for the 1994 season. But if you were born when Montana and Rice and Lott and Craig won those back-to-back in 88 and 89, you probably don't really remember the 49ers winning the Super Bowl. So, yeah, they have the history. And you could always rely on the history. They're always going to be a glory franchise. But if you were born then, if you're 30 in your mid-30s or younger, probably all you've known is heartache. That's it. You've come so close to the mountaintop so many times, and all you know is heartache. And I want to go through it. Let's just let this be a therapy session. Let's relive this pain together for what's hopefully going to be a cleansing feeling in 3 weeks. So if you look back now, the Niners were just in pro sports, the best franchise. You wanted to be them from 1981 through 1998, despite what league you played in, despite what sport you played. You wanted to be like the San Francisco 49ers in the playoffs every year, 10 plus wins every year, 5 Super Bowl championships, the 2 of the best quarterbacks ever to play, the best wide receiver ever to play, you know, arguably the best head coach, maybe the most innovative one in Bill Walsh. Just absolute epitome of what you should be in sports were the 49ers. And then in 1999, something happens. A running back who the Niners took a flyer on, who was troubled, misses a block, and your Hall of Fame quarterback gets hit and gets a concussion and can never play again. 1999, you're 4-12. Niner fans are not used to that. 2000, 6-10, still, you're like, you know, this isn't the 49ers. But You have a good coach in Steve Mariucci. Jeff Garcia becomes a good quarterback. You have T.O. You go 12-4 and 10-6 and make the playoffs the next 2 years. But I never thought in those 2 years they were really a Super Bowl team. They had that exciting comeback win against the Giants in the playoffs in 2002, but then they get destroyed by the Buccaneers, and they had lost in the wild card round the year before. So they get rid of Mooch. And I remember when they got rid of Mariucci, I said, okay, maybe they just thought Mooch had taken them as far as he can, and they're going to hire a 49ers guy. And I thought Denny Green at the time. I was shocked when they hired Dennis Erickson. Shocked. In the next year, you had some of the same players, but they weren't a good team. They went 7-9. And then after that is when things really went off the rails. You get the second year of Dennis Erickson and you're 2-14. And this is when the bad quarterback play starts. When you're talking the Tim Rattays, you're talking the Trent Dilfers, Sean Hills, young Alex Smith. They get rid of Dennis Erickson 2004 after that season. And then they go to Mike Nolan, and they gave Mike Nolan a lot of power. And Mike Nolan had never had any head coach experience. And I think, frankly, Mike Nolan did a terrible job with the 49ers and put Alex Smith in a really tough situation. I feel like Alex Smith was coming out of this offense in Utah, this wide open offense, and he wanted him to be a different kind of quarterback. They changed coordinators on him every single season. He had hurt his shoulder and kind of got thrown under the bus by Nolan because he couldn't throw the ball. Alex Smith was just put in the worst situation possible. And it looked like his Niner career was over as they move on to Mike Singletary after Nolan. And they had an 8-8 season in that run, but you're still not a good team. And it looked like, they had the game where all the fans are chanting for Derek Carr. And it looked like Alex Smith's career is just over. And it had been 8 years at that point from when the Niners lost that game to the Bucs in the 2003, but the 2002 season playoffs. 8 years without a winning record. That is a long time. 8 years is a really long time. You could enter high school and graduate from college in that time frame and not see your team have a winning season. It's a lot. And, listen, as I go through this, the Niners are not a tortured franchise like the Bills. They're not an inept franchise like the Lions. They're not an irrelevant franchise like, say, the Panthers. So you say 8 years. Oh, my God, we've been going through it forever. Well, for Niners fans, you weren't used to that. So that 8 years was a really long time. But then they bring in Jim Harbaugh. And Alex Smith comes back. And you're like, wait a minute. You're bringing Smith back? And Harbaugh's like, yeah, I have confidence in him. And this team in 2011 comes out of nowhere. No one believed in that 2011 team. Nobody. And they go 13-3. And they get to the NFC Championship game after one of the great playoff games in 49ers history, where Alex Smith comes back from behind, throws the touchdown pass to Vernon Davis. Just absolute redemption. They head into the NFC Championship game, and their kick returner's hurt. I didn't think a lot of that at the time. I said, okay, no Ted Ginn, but I still think they can beat the Giants, and I think they have a really good chance at the Super Bowl. And what happens that year? Heartache. The first gut punch when you get two muffed kicks and you don't go to the Super Bowl because of it. And I think they would have beat the Patriots that year in the Super Bowl. There's the first gut punch you had as 49ers fans. But now we have a good team. And we go into 2012 with a really good team. Alex Smith playing well, gets a concussion. We go to Colin Kaepernick. Okay, this is a second-year quarterback. They're going to run with this guy. Well, Kaepernick, people weren't used to it at the time, and the Niners were doing things with the read option, and they didn't know how to defend Cap, and they get to the Super Bowl. And again, I'm thinking they're going to beat the Ravens. They have this quarterback people don't know how to stop. The defense was banged up, but they still had so many good players there. You feel like they're going to be okay. They get down huge in the Super Bowl. Then they come all the way back after the lights go out. They're going to come back. Biggest comeback in Super Bowl history. First down, I was on the 5, right? Right around there. Frank Gore doesn't touch the ball. You throw, 3 fades in a row, and you lose. I remember sitting there like, I didn't cry, but I could have cried. It was such a heartbreaking punch in the gut. And after the year before, you're like, how can we go through this? How can we have another year like this back to back? Well, it's going to get worse. It felt like in 2013, they had the best roster in the NFL. They just did. They were loaded. Now, what happened that season in 2013, Kaepernick starts off where he just has one of the great all-time games for the Niners. Again, first game against the Packers, just plays terrific, and prompts Ron Jaworski to say he may be the best quarterback we've ever seen. Then things kind of fell off for the offense. Kaepernick only averaged 154 yards passing. They go, I think it was 5-4 over their next 9, or 4-4. They lost 4 games within 8 or 9 games there. And then they go on another run. But what happened there with that early middle of the season slump, they lost home field advantage. So they have to go to Seattle for the NFC Championship game. And again, they're on the road. They won tough games at Green Bay. I think it was at Carolina. Cap was playing well, but then you go into Seattle. And again, it was a hard-fought game. I mean, the winner of that game is winning the Super Bowl. You have the Niners driving to go ahead at the end there, and then you get the tip ball interception with Sherman. And I just remember, like, I have this little TV above my bar. And my TV, then I have a little TV above my bar. And for whatever reason, I remember I was drinking beers and I was just watching the game on the little TV. And I remember when that interception got thrown and the ball got tipped, I was leaning against the wall. And I just remember just falling down the wall, just like numb. 3 years in a row of just absolute kicks in the balls. Get that far and lose like that 3 years in a row when really a couple things here and there, you could have been talking about 3 Super Bowls in a row. And then the next season, you're still like, you know what? I feel like Kaepernick's going to take the next step. This team's still super talented. We're going to be fine. We've got a good head coach in Jim Harbaugh. We're going to be fine. But then you start to hear, is Harbaugh going to get traded? And you're like, what? What are we talking about here? But there was infighting going on. And there was stuff going on in the background and behind the scenes. And the Niners start out 5-3, and then everything just goes to hell. They end up 8-8. They don't make the playoffs, and Harbaugh is out. And I always said it wasn't that they got rid of Harbaugh. It was what they did after they got rid of him. Because Harbaugh's a difficult dude. He's a little bit crazy. Things were getting bad in that locker room. And if it got to the point where they felt like this guy has to go, fine. But probably in hindsight is 2020. But probably what they should have done is tried to keep things as status quo as possible and promoted Fangio and just tried to keep things the way that they were as much as you can in terms of what they were doing on the field. But they go with Jim Tomsula, and we all know how that went. And then it's one and done with Tomsula, and then you go to Chip Kelly, which was really just a wasted season. I'm not really sure what they were thinking there. They kept Balky. They should have got rid of Balky and started over, but they don't. They keep Balky. He brings in Kelly, and then after that, everything implodes after another 2-14 season. So the Tomsula and Kelly years, the Niners go 7-25. They might have the worst roster in the NFL. They probably did. And they had a reputation where there was a lot of leaking going on, and they had to give Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch 6-year contracts, which at the time was unprecedented. Now, Kyle and John come in. First season, you have Patrick Mahomes sitting there. You have Deshaun Watson. They decide to go Solomon Thomas with the first pick, roll with Brian Hoyer, and hope they're going to get Kirk Cousins in free agency the next year. Obviously, things end up differently. They trade for Garoppolo. They have a 6-10 season, and then Garoppolo gets hurt the next year, and it's 4-12, and you're still kind of feeling like, this kind of feels like more of the same. We knew it was going to be a rebuild, but this is still frustrating. Then you get the 13-3 season. That came out of nowhere for me. I thought the Niners would be a lot better in 2019, but I did not think they were going to the Super Bowl. I thought they'd be a playoff team, but Super Bowl, they were ahead of things, but that's great. And you get there, and you have a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and then what happened. I wish Debo had touched the ball more in the second half, but even so, I remember when the drive happened where Garoppolo overthrew Emmanuel Sanders, and the Niners ultimately end up losing by not scoring there. I remember thinking to myself when they were taking the field, I'm a big you do or you don't guy, and this is where you do or you don't. Joe Montana and Bill Walsh did. Super Bowl 23, 92 yards. They come with that drive to go ahead and you're legends. You either make the plays there or you don't, and they didn't, and the Niners end up blowing that point lead. But that was still, you had the Super Bowl in your hands. Another gut punch for this fan base that at this point, for 20 years now, that's all they've had is either you've been bad or you've gotten gut punches. Next season, you throw it out because it was COVID. So many things happened. Again, the Niners have injuries all year. Bosa's out for the season. Debo was banged up. Kittle was banged up. Garoppolo only played 8 games. And then you get into 2021 and 2022. Now, 2022, 21, I thought they were really playing with house's money at 10-7. They won a couple of ugly playoff games. You got to kind of muck it up. The offense wasn't scoring. They beat Dallas with defense. They made Dak look shook. They beat Green Bay with the block punt in defense. And you get to the NFC Championship game again against a team that you've owned, absolutely owned in the Rams. The Rams never beat the 49ers under Shanahan, ever. And they end up losing the game. You get a dropped interception that would have changed things, and you lose a close game. Again, just so tough to take. But you go to 2022, and again, early in the season, I'm like, I don't know if this is a Super Bowl team. What were they, 3-5? They started out. But then you get McCaffrey, and things are starting to click. And then you have the Brock Purdy situation happen. This guy comes out of nowhere, and the offense is clicking like you've never seen it click before. And you get into the playoffs, and you destroy Seattle. It was a close game at halftime, but then you destroy the second half, and you win a tough, gritty game against Dallas. And those games sometimes are even more rewarding when it's good defense, when points are hard to come by, when your quarterback, who's a rookie, 7th rounder, makes less mistakes than the $40 million guy on the other side of the field, when he makes big throws on 3rd and 1 to seal the game. Those games are really rewarding. So they win a game where everything's going well and they're scoring a lot of points, and then they win the tough game. And you're going into Philly, and you feel good. Philly was a really good team, but you feel good. And then you don't get a chance to compete. You don't even get a chance to compete in the game. So there can be all the talking after about what would have happened and who did what. But at the end of the day, the 49ers didn't even get a chance to play the game because of Purdy's injury. And I think that's the most frustrating thing. That may be, while it didn't hurt as bad, maybe, as those other 5 losses, because it wasn't last second. It didn't come down to the end because you weren't holding on for 3 hours. Said, we almost got this. You knew maybe right away it was over. In a way, it felt worse because you didn't get a chance to compete. You didn't get a chance to see what would have happened. We'll never know. Never know. That Niners team that was clicking is very similar to the team we have this year that's clicking, what they would have done, or if they would have won the Super Bowl. So the Niners have 6 winning seasons since 2003. And in every one of those seasons to this point, they've made the NFC Championship game, and they have 0 championships to show for it. That is tough to take. So now we enter 2023. Like I said, everybody knows what's at stake here. George Kittle said before the season start, he said, we have a lot of highly paid players on this team who have earned that money. And you can only pay so many guys. And we know that some of those guys are at the end of their contracts and the end of the guarantees. And that's where things start to move. So even Kittle knows, the team knows, there's only so much time left. And now is the time to do it. Now is the time to put all these things that happened in the past, all the things that some of you maybe stay up at night and think about. I know I still do sometimes. The hardest one for me, oh God, it's like picking. 2011 was tough for me. 2011 was so tough for me because that was a Niners team that came out of nowhere. And I think for me, growing up again, I'm in my early 40s. So when they were good, they were good. So when I was a kid. So when they won, you expected them to win. Well, I expected the Niners were going to be good this year, and they have a chance, as you have in most of the Shanahan seasons. But through that 2011 team, I thought they were going to go like 3-13 that season, and they go 13-3. And there's just guys on that team that you really root for. Frank Gore, who's just an all-time Niner and just did things the right way. The Alex Smith redemption story. You have Bowman and Willis, who just 2 classy guys who playing at such a high level. Justin Smith, Joe Staley, just these guys that you love as 49ers. They came out of nowhere to lose the way that they did. Remember being in a bar, I live in New York, so with a bunch of Giants fans, and again, sitting there like, don't cry, don't cry. It was that hard to take for that. As we get into this playoff run, it's huge. And I think everybody really feels that. I know I certainly do. And if it ends with anything other, once you get to the Super Bowl, right, it's kind of like, all right, well, you made the Super Bowl. You never know what's going to happen, especially with teams like the Ravens and Patrick Mahomes maybe on the other side. But the Niners have to get it done this year. If not now, when? And I think anything other than that is going to be a disappointment. And even when you look at Kyle Shanahan, like this is a huge 3-week stretch for Kyle Shanahan, who, if he gets a Super Bowl, is going to shoot into the elite stratosphere of head coaches. Right now, there's the elite guys, and I think he's in the next tier of just really, really good head coaches. I don't think you were going to call Andy Reid a legendary. Like Andy Reid was always a phenomenal head coach, but until he got those titles, that's where he gets into the elite legendary status. You got to win titles to get there. And I think Kyle is sort of where Andy Reid was prior to that. And when you look at where Kyle is, let's just look at him in 49ers history. He has coached 115 games for the 49ers. The only coaches that have coached more games, head coaches that have coached more games, George Seifert has 128 and Bill Walsh has 152. He's going to catch Seifert next season. He's going to pass Seifert next season. And it looks like he's going to surpass Walsh too. He may be the longest tenured head coach in 49ers history. Kyle Shanahan has been in, let's see here, 9 playoff games. The only coaches with more, this is for the head coach of the 49ers, Bill Walsh with 14 and George Seifert with 10. Seifert and Walsh each have 10 playoff wins. Shanahan is second with, so they're tied for first with 10, and then Shanahan is next with 6 for the 49ers. Now, obviously, Walsh has 3 titles, Seifert has 2, so Shanahan has to get that one. It just changes so much for him. And Shanahan has a reputation right now, fair or not, that he can't win the big game, that something always happens. And we talked about it. So even if you just look at, let's take it back to his offensive coordinator days with the Falcons, he wasn't the head coach, but for some reason he gets the blame for that 28-3 debacle, where a lot of things happen. When you blow a 28-3 lead, a lot of things happen. Should he have run on 3rd and 1? Yeah, probably. He's trying to put the game away. It didn't work out. A lot of that fell on him. And maybe that's not fair. You feel like, why doesn't more of that fall on Dan Quinn? But it always feels like Kyle gets the brunt of that. And then with the 49ers, we saw, look, they blew a 10-point lead in the 4th quarter in the Super Bowl. You got to own that. You have to live with that. They don't get it done against the Rams in that close game. That's another game where you're like, oh, they were on the doorstep and it didn't happen. And you have to throw last season out. Again, when you don't even get a chance to compete, I think you have to throw that out. But Kyle is just on the doorstep right now. He's just on this precipice of just being this elite coach. He gets the Super Bowl and you're talking, I may put him top 3 if he gets a Super Bowl. Because right now, I have to go through the coaches. At least top 5. He's just a perennial 10, 12, 13 win coach right now. That's really difficult to do. That is elite level stuff. And you have, Belichick does that. Andy Reid does that. Coaches that can do that year in and year out, it's elite. Sean McVay's an elite guy, and Sean McVay's got that title. You saw what McVay did with a lesser team this season. He made a nice run and was really close to beating a Detroit team that could also end up in the NFC Championship game. So it's a huge, huge season for Kyle. It's a huge season for the players on this team. We mentioned all the guys in 2011. Players that are just revered. Players that if you ask any 49ers fans, they love those guys. We love Frank Gore. We love Joe Staley. We love Patrick Willis. We love Bowman. We love Justin Smith. I think people respect the hell out of Alex Smith and what he came back from and how he carries himself and the redemption angle with him. And Alex Smith is just a good example. You look at a lot of athletes and you say, like, don't look up to that guy. But Alex Smith, you're like, yeah, look at the way he handled things. He just handled things with class all the time, no matter what was thrown at him. And he came back and ended up from a disastrous first, whatever it was, 6 years or whatever it was with him in the league, to having a Pro Bowl career as a quarterback. He really turned it around with the Niners and was a Pro Bowl QB with Kansas City. So we have all those players, but they don't have the title. And they're never, despite how much we love them, you don't look at them like the Montanas and the Lotts and the Rice and John Taylor and Roger Craig, because those guys have the title. It just brings you up into a different stratosphere. And that's what I want for the guys on this team. There are so many great players on this team. Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Eric Armstead's been a great 49er. Then you go over to the offensive side of the ball. Trent Williams, George Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, who going down, I don't know if they have longevity, but certainly in the time that he's here, maybe the best running back the Niners have ever had, or right up there. Brock Purdy, the story of Brock Purdy, the 7th round pick coming in. If he wins the Super Bowl, again, that's stuff you make movies out of that. That's Kurt Warner type stuff. Legendary stuff. So people can nitpick him all they want to. He wins the Super Bowl right away. Legendary stuff. There's just so much on the line. So much on the line. So for me to come into this show, I just think that's what I had to do. I had to relive what we've been through. Maybe it was my own therapy session. And if you listen to this the whole way through with me, I appreciate that. But I had to sit here and I had to talk about, I guess, sort of what me as a fan, and my fandom has changed since I started doing this. Once you start covering the team and you start working with the team and you start getting to know people around the team, the curtain gets pulled back. It does change things. I feel like anybody who's done this, it has to at some point. You talk to a lot of people who work in the media and you ask them, well, what's your favorite team? And they're like, well, I used to be a fan of whatever. And now I'm kind of not a fan of anybody. And I never really understood that till I started to do this. And I definitely went through some years there where I was like, I don't feel like as passionate as I did at one point. Like I used to be. Niners and the Yankees are my ride or die teams, like absolute ride or die. So I used to feel like, the Niners would lose and I would like be crushed on a Sunday. It would bother me so much. And like I said, those losses killed me. And I went through a little bit of a period where I was just kind of like, this felt businessy to me. And now it's starting to go back the other way where my fandom is starting to get back there again. It really happened really around when Purdy came in last season, where I was kind of like, I don't know, I just kind of felt that special feeling again. And I'm there again. And I just know how passionate 49ers fans are. I know how passionate social media, just in interacting with me and listening to other shows, whatever. This is one of the great fan bases. The Bills get a lot of, publicity because people are jumping on tables and everything else. And you have other teams that get a lot of publicity for their fans. But Niners fans, to me, I don't know if there's anybody better. Really don't. And you even look at the way that just content creators are supported. Look around the league, where they're the amount of content creators that there are that are covering the 49ers. And the reason that there's so many 49ers content creators like me, because we have a following, because we're able to do this because the fans are so passionate, because the fans are not only going to follow, Matt Mayoko and Matt Barrows and Cam Inman and all those great guys who cover the team, Mike Silver, but they're also going to follow all the content creators that are doing this, keeping us going. To have that balance and to have fans support both shows you how passionate they are. Like, I want this for you guys too. We do the show every week. We do 2 shows a week. I've been doing this with the year off I took. It's been like 7. Well, it's been since Shanahan started. So other than when I was with KNBR in 2019, I've done the show every other year. So I know how passionate you guys are. And I've kind of lived through this regime, and I've been talking about this and back and forth, and you feel really connected with the fan base. And I want this for you guys, and I want this for the content creators, and I want this for the people who cover the team. This has felt kind of special since the beginning. Well, the preseason was a little chaotic, but what was interesting about that is, like, once Bosa signed and Lance gets traded and everything else, from week 1 on, the switch just flipped. It was just all business. And they went through some ups and downs, which you do as a team. You're going to go through ups and downs throughout a season. You're not going to, most likely not going to go 15-1 or whatever it be now, 15-2, 16-1, and then have an easy 1989 49ers run through the playoffs. That doesn't really happen anymore. But they went through adversity. They bounced back from adversity. They played really well. You've seen some huge highs this season. The statistics you've seen this season, the only team ever with a running back, tight end, and 2 wide receivers with over 1,000 scrimmage yards. Those 4 players at those 3 positions to have over 1,000 scrimmage yards. Only team to ever do that. The historic season of Brock Purdy. Steve Wilkes looked like he's ready to get fired at the bye, and then he turns things around in the second half. It's just been such a wonderful season. I want it to end with the title, because if it doesn't, there's a lot of people who are going to feel like, yeah, and right or wrong, again, you feel how you feel. I'm not going to tell you how to feel. Some people may feel like it was a great season, man. Like they didn't win, but you have to enjoy the good parts too. Like you have to look back and say, yeah, it was a fun season, regardless that they didn't win the Super Bowl. And then some fans are going to say, no, it was a failure. They had to win the Super Bowl this year. All that stuff is great, but at the end of the day, we want another Lombardi. So regardless of how you feel, I'm not going to tell you how to feel. You feel how you feel. Your emotions are what your emotions are. But it's all a moot point if they finish the job. So that's where I am right now as we head into this. I cannot wait for Saturday night. I cannot wait. It's going to be a big run. I feel good. I always say, if you guys listen to me, I'm not afraid to knock the team. I'm not afraid to say what I think. I'm not afraid to be negative. Feel super positive right now. And I just had to come on today and just I don't know, man, just vent with how I was feeling with everything. I think a lot of fans feel that way too. You know what? If you do, let me hear it. If you need a therapy session, if you want to respond to this, even if it's just sending me something on Twitter or whatever, let me know how you feel about it. Because I really think that this is just a lot of 49er fans are really, not that we're ever not emotionally involved, but this season just feels like, again, that's just the theme for me. If not now, when? And I think we're all there right now. All right. Well, thanks for listening to me, Ben. I hope you guys stayed with me the whole time to go through my therapy session. You guys were my therapist today. I got to kind of talk to you and talk about sort of what I'm feeling with this. And hopefully, again, in 3 weeks, it's going to be a really celebratory podcast. We'll see. Thanks, everybody.
9-0-3. 1, 2, 3.
.2400 Sports is an Odyssey company.